In this video, we will look at Power BI, Dataflows, and Artificial Intelligence. Together, this means that Power BI is really coming into the age of collaborative analytics. Now we will create a Dataflow, which is a way which users can share datasets. We can see here in the interface that we go to Create and then we select Dataflow. When we have selected creating a data flow, we are going to select new entities. This will help us to understand the data that is coming into Power BI. This is essential for starting a data flow. With any system, the first thing we need to do is ingest data. We can see here that Power BI offers a whole range of data sources. We have some non-Microsoft technologies as well, such as Salesforce. In this example, we will use the Online Shoppers Purchasing Intention Dataset. This is available from the UCI Machine Learning repository, and we can see how the data looks here in Excel. I'm sure you're accustomed to seeing similar datasets. The purpose of this dataset is to understand whether someone is likely to convert to be a purchaser or someone who will leave the website. What we have here is the data is uploaded to GitHub, and it's available from the Power BI AI Samples GitHub repository. You can see the URL here, and it's in CSV format. We are going to take that link and put it into connection settings, and then we're going to select the next option down here. So the first step is to ingest our data in a data flow, and as we do this, we can apply artificial intelligence at that point. We can amend the query as the data comes in. What we want to do is make sure that the columns are in the correct format. This is an essential step for future artificial intelligence operations on the data. This is essentially Power Query, which is available as part of the data flow. We can give our query a name, and I'm going to rename that here to Online Visitor. When we click on a column, we can see the data types at the top left-hand side of the column name. When we right-click, we have a variety of options. The next step is in Power Query, we will check the data types. We can see here that this is available to us in the left-hand side of the top of the column. We can quite clearly see the data type, and here we are changing the data type. We do that quite simply by right-clicking on it and then selecting the option that we want. We are using revenue as a predictor. That will help us to identify if a shopper actually purchased something or not. The next thing we need to do is to save the data flow to proceed. So when we select the column, we can see now that there is an X and a tick to denote that this is a binary data type, basically a true or a false. Now we save the data flow. I am adding in some additional description information so that it's useful for anyone else who would like to take a look. Now our data flow is saved. We can refresh now, and if there are any metadata changes, they can be picked up at this point. So the next thing we will do is refresh the dataset. You can see some options here under Actions, and we have the opportunity to apply an ML model here. We will come back to that action later. The first thing we want to do, however, is simply refresh the dataset. We can add in new properties and a further description as well, just so that we are clear. So what I will do is refresh now. We could set a refresh schedule, but for the purposes of this demonstration, we will just refresh now. So the first step is Power Query will validate the query for us. And now we're refreshing the data. Now we have a list of data flows. The ones that we are interested in is the online visitor data flow. We can see some actions. For example, we could schedule a refresh. We could also look at the properties, and we could also export it as well if we like. Now we are going to apply the machine learning model. In the Power BI official example, they use a specific type of model, and I've deviated here in order to use a different one so you can see the difference. To do that, we go back to our Actions menu here, and we look for the very small brain here, which is the actions under the Actions label. So what we can do now is add a machine learning model. To do that, we simply click on the plus sign, and now we can try to predict what factors will predict whether someone will convert to be a shopper or not. We can tell that from the revenue column that we saw earlier in the data. So basically, if there's revenue, then it's a true. If there's no revenue, it's a false, which means that they did not buy anything. So now the data has been picked up. In the official example, they use a binary prediction, but we are going to choose general classification. Now we click on Next, and we can see that we can pick and choose which features might contribute to the revenue predictor or not. We will stick to the default options for now, but we could play around with these features in order to identify which ones we think are the largest predictor. So the next step is to name and review the model. Now this is really interesting because we haven't had to write any code at all, do any maths or any statistics. The Power BI and DI solution has identified potential models for us, and we have simply selected one from a range of options. I'm going to let this experiment run for 8 minutes, but don't worry, we will come back to this when it's finished. In the meantime, you can see that we have selected a classification model type here. The base entity is our online visitor data flow, which we set up earlier, and the column that we want to predict is revenue, whether someone bought something or not. Now the changes have been saved. The refresh is now in progress, and the model will be applied to the data. Put very simply, a classification problem is one where they classify the data into a given set of categories. A binary classification splits the data into yes or no, but the more general classification option might find more options in the data. We're going to choose this one to see how it works. The reality is when we're modeling, we tend to choose more than one model, and we try different models and see which one performs the best. And this is why it's important to understand the accuracy of the model. Classification itself is a supervised learning approach where the computer program learns from the data input given to it and then tries to use it to classify new observations. So the data is split into training and test sets. In order to understand the data better, however, we can use Power BI to understand really what's happening in the data. So we don't always have to understand specifically the statistics, and we don't always have to understand machine learning as a discipline, but we can use Power BI to use the pre-trained models that we can use to apply to our data. And we do that in order to explore the data. It's another tool we can use to help us understand our customers better. This uses AutoML, and it's available for preview in all public cloud regions where Power BI Premium and Embedded is available. We apply the model to incoming data, and then we use Power BI to help us to understand how we can keep the predictions up to date. This explanation allows us to understand the factors or the variables that are most important in determining the outcome. In this example here, we see that customer satisfaction is an important, and in fact, it shows here the only predictor that is relevant to whether someone converted to becoming a shopper or not. What this does is it allows us to look at customer satisfaction and understand why our shopping we can then use this to understand why customer satisfaction from repeat shoppers is the most important thing, as opposed to other factors that may be involved. In this case, we can understand more about the data and we can explore it further. The great thing about Power BI is it helps us to use machine learning models and allows us to understand the data better. So here we've just simply used very small tables to help us to understand which features or variables are the most important ones. What we could do is start to visualize the data. You see quite quickly that the first 3 columns are the most important ones. Now what we would then do is go back and use different models to understand the data better, but this would give us something to help us to understand more about our customers. The customer satisfaction is really the most important predictor of whether someone will become a repeat shopper or not. To learn more, go to powerbi.com. There's also a step-by-step tutorial which is written by the Power BI team, and you can see where to find that here. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to hearing from you.